few minutes talking to you all about defining moments. One of the most defining moments of my life happened when I was just 2 years old. My dad was in a really bad, actually I was 1 year old, he was in a really bad plane accident. And through that, he was a pilot in the Air Force, and through that, my mom and dad came to know the Lord in a personal way. And if that had not happened, I don't know where I would be now. I know that the Lord would have been wooing me, but I'll tell you, I'm just so blessed that my parents came to know the Lord, because that really changed the trajectory of my life. Neither one of my parents had come from Christian homes, so it was a really huge shift and a huge change in my little life at one year old. So I think I asked the Lord in my heart about 2.5, sitting on my dad's lap and saying to him, he was reading a book to me about how these kids were dirty, and that there was a way for them to get clean, but they had to make a choice to get clean. And I said, I don't want to be dirty, I want to be clean. And so I asked the Lord to be the Lord of my life. But you all know, some of you who have grown up in Christian homes, that when you come to know the Lord at a really young age, there are defining moments throughout your life where the Lord just invites you to go deeper, and invites you to put aside some things that you no longer need, some habits, or some not just even sin issues, but just things that he's like, it's time to outgrow that. It's time to pull in deeper with me. And so when I was at ORU, it was just a really defining time in my life. And so I know, kind of coasted through my first couple years and became engaged to a guy, and it just seemed the right thing to do. We'd been dating long enough, and it was like, well, that's the next thing to do is to get engaged. And so between my junior and senior year of college, I went on a missions trip through ORU to Germany. So I went on that missions trip to Germany, and during that time, the Lord just really began to speak to my heart. So back in the Stone Ages, there was not the internet. There was not a way to email. There was not a way to Skype or to FaceTime or to do the WhatsApp or whatever, to do free texting. So there was none of that. And so it was over $2 a minute to call on the phone. So you just really, it was kind of like, I'm fine, everything's good, I love Germany, goodbye, So and back then there were 8-week-long missions trips. So I was there for 8 weeks, and the Lord just really began speaking to my heart, because it was a time that none of my friends were on the team, so it was just a time that I really could just settle in and hear from the Lord and be in an environment where I didn't have a lot of distractions. So the Lord really began working in my heart about this guy not being the right guy for me. But I kind of kept stuffing that down, thinking, I've got a ring on my hand. What do you mean? This isn't from you, Lord. When I came back from that missions trip, no sooner had I been back, but 2 weeks later, my fiance and I broke up. And that was one of the most difficult times in my life, because I thought, what had defined me was I was engaged and I was getting married, and that's the thing that college girls do, and what am I going to do after I graduate, and here's my senior year, and I'm not, my plans have all blown up in my face, and that became a defining moment in my life. And I can remember sitting out. I was a Towers girl, okay? I didn't know about Claudius. I know that's kind of the best place to be now. But hey, Bria, right? I was a Towers girl, yes. And I remember on 4th floor sitting outside of my dorm room, and because my roommate was doing student teaching, so I had to be real quiet at night because she was getting up at the crack of dawn, So I just remember just being so hungry for God's word, and just sitting out in the hallway, and just, we didn't have phone, if I had to bring my phone out there, it was plugged into the wall, and do you remember, Cheryl? And you'd bring it out underneath the door. But just sitting there with my Bible and just plugging in and digging deep with the Lord, and it was just a really, really sweet time in my life. Well, fast forward a little bit, and I met my husband now, and we dated 10 months, got engaged, and 3 months later we're married. And so it was kind of a whirlwind there with my husband. We've been married 26 years now. But that year was a defining year for me. And I'm so grateful for that heartbreak now, because that was not what God's plan was for me. And he was so gentle with me, but also just very firm. This is not the way you are to take. It was a defining moment. And then fast forward, several years, started having kids and things were really busy. And, my relationship with the Lord just started to get stagnant. Of course, I was saved. I loved the Lord. I was going to church. I was doing all the good girl things. But I didn't have those moments sitting outside my dorm room digging deep in the Bible. My Bible was starting to get really dusty. And, another defining moment was when I chose to go deep again with the Lord. And I said, Lord, this isn't good. I'm getting stagnant. I'm not growing in my walk with you. I feel like I'm just still a child in my walk with you. And so I just really positioned myself once again to hear from the Lord. And that became a defining year again, where I just dug in deep. And so I just want to encourage you tonight that no matter where you're at, there's going to be seasons that you're going to have to choose to go deeper with the Lord. And you're going to have to choose to sometimes, turn the distractions off. You're going to have to choose to dust the Bible off and get in there. And I will say that each time that I've done that, it's been personal, and it's not been just checking off the box. It's been a relationship with the Lord. And when I've chosen to go deep, He's gone deep in me, and He's taken some areas in my life and transformed them. And because we all have those human areas in our lives that we need the hand of God. Whether it would be that we have a quick temper, or whether it be that we're lazy, or whether it be that we we're hanging in the wrong crowd, or we're doing some things that we just know. Even for me recently, it was a show that I was watching on Netflix. I got excited about it, and of course, about the fourth show in, I was like, I'm not supposed to be watching this. So even at my age, there's choices that I have to choose to make, because again, it's not that the Lord will check me off His list, but it's like, Lord, I don't want anything getting in the way in my relationship with you. I don't want anything clogging my ears from hearing you. I don't want anything getting in the way of me seeing you. And so those moments of choosing to go deeper with the Lord in those defining moments. And so tonight I just wanted to remind us of the story in Esther, and how, Esther had those defining moments in her life. Here she was, an orphan girl. She could have chosen to be bitter. She could have It's no problem. I'm glad you're here. He's so cute. But Esther could have chosen to be bitter, and she could have chosen to have what we call now that orphan spirit, where she just would maybe say, Lord, you must not care about me. I mean, her mom and her dad both died, and she was left with her cousin. And so, her cousin was more like an uncle to her. But those defining moments where she chose to have a teachable heart, and she learned the ways of the Lord. And so when she went into the palace, she was unlike any other girl that was there in the palace. She chose to do things that weren't just trying to get ahead of the game for her, but she chose to do what was spoken to her. She chose to just obey and to be part of God's plan for her life. But as we all know in the story, she had another defining moment where she had to choose. I can have this position for myself. I can have this position and stay comfortable, or I can have this position and ask the king to save my people. And we all know what her cousin Mordecai said, where he said, God can bring deliverance from another area, but what if He's chosen you? What if He's chosen you for such a time as this? What if He's positioned you? And so I want to say that to you tonight. God can use someone with a writing degree, Alyssa, to write the words that He wants. But what if He's chosen you? What if He's brought you to this place? He could use somebody else, but what if He wants to use you right now for His purposes? And so I think what happens is the enemy wants to try to come into each of our lives and say, well, who do you think you are? Like, there's someone better than you, or you're never going to amount to anything. But you know what? You're here tonight even for a purpose. You're at the college that you're at, or the job that you're at. You're in the family that you're in. You were raised in the family that you were raised in. Even if you weren't raised in a Christian home, God is using that for His purpose in your life. Even if you've had broken things in your life, God will use those things. And I want to remind you about the story of Joseph. Remember, Joseph his brothers hated him, sold him into slavery. He was wrongfully imprisoned, but he was able to say, you intended to harm me, but God has used this for the good, for the saving of many lives. And so, no matter how the enemy has tried to harm you or to hurt you, I hope that you guys can trust that the Lord will use even those broken places and even those places that he's touching, he's going to touch tonight and bring healing, that he can use those things for even the saving of lives, for the bringing in. He wants us to be women who are willing to proclaim his good news and to bring others into the family. And so I know that no matter what you've been through, no matter what you're going through, no matter where you're at, he wants to define you as his daughter. He wants you to know that he's put his stamp of approval on you. He wants to know that there's nothing that you've done or that anybody else has done to you that's just disqualified you for what the Lord has for you. But you are his daughter. You are chosen. When he died on the cross, he had you in mind. He had you in mind. I don't know how he can do it, but if God created each of us in his image, we're all a part of him, and he had you in mind. He had me in mind. And so what he did for us and what he accomplished on the cross over 2,000 years ago is just as powerful and just as active and just as alive. And he wants us participating in his resurrection life. And that's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing. And so just think about your cell phones and how they can do amazing things, right? But when you start to get on low power, you've got to plug in. I have a plug-in right over there because anytime Kelly or Luke or Danny and I have friends over, people are always like, do you have a charger for my phone? Because when our phones are on 2%, we need to charge them up. Well, I want to encourage you that we're human. And yes, we're filled with the Spirit. We're powered up with the Spirit. But there's times that we allow ourselves to get weak. There's times that we allow ourselves to just get low on power. And we need to be charged up. So the Lord is about restoring us back to that perfect design that he had for us when he had us in mind when he was on the cross. That perfect design that he had when he knit you together in your mother's womb. And the enemy's always trying to get us to have a different identity. And the Lord's like, no. This is your identity. You're mine. You're 100% perfect and complete because of what I've done for you.